just thank you for your love. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for everything you do in our lives continuously now and forevermore. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Praise the Lord.
So for here at the Journey Church,
Yes.
we just we focus on you, Lord, and we're grateful for just the opportunity just to know you. We're grateful for the opportunity just to focus on you and all those things. And we just want to go through just a few of our announcements, and but we want to go through our mission as well. So here at the Journey Church, we have a mission that we focus on, and we abide by that. We abide by that, and we're grateful for that. But we want to make sure we also, prior to that, we want to focus on our prayer list. We have those individuals that we're not able to make it today, but we're grateful and we know that you are there in spirit. We are wanting to focus on Miss Mary Beth and Donald. We want to focus on Brother Galen and Swift Healing. We want to focus on Sister and my grandmother, Lucille Hicks. We're focused on Sister Hazel and so many others that we're focused on. We want to focus on just all those individuals that can't be here.
Yeah.
Hopefully that you're healing swiftly, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, in all those ways.
Yeah.
We just want to say that we want to thank you just for getting your opportunities to get that time with us. And we're just grateful to know you, and we're praying for you.
Yeah.
But here at the Journey Church, our journey vision, we are a multicultural fellowship of believers on a lifelong journey to experience Jesus Christ and impact the local community so the message of the gospel can spread across the world. Our journey mission, which is our mission statement that we all have promised to do. Our journey mission, we are committed to call to evangelize to non-believers. If you're lost, non-believers. We are here while empowering believers of all cultures to learn their purpose. Can you say that with me, church? Purpose.
Purpose.
In Christ to prepare. Can you say that with me, church? Prepare.
Prepare.
Them to live for Christ so that they may walk in power.
Power.
Can you say that with me, church? Power.
Power.
With Christ. That's our journey mission. So some of our announcements we just want to share. We had a wonderful and successful Grocery Feast of Seniors.
Yes.
So many different people that were there. Those who were there were so grateful just for the time that you spent and just donating your time to those who have poured so much into us.
Yeah.
And we're just trying our best to try to pour back into you. Just thank you for that. Our Grocery Feast of Seniors is every fourth Saturday of the month. So if you got the time, we will find a place to be able to put your hands to work. And just come on out. We laugh, we joke, we listen, and we praise music, and we get moving. And we will put you to work. Coming up, we also are giving back to our journey individuals and people that gave back for our volunteers. That's actually going to be just a fun-filled day of food, fellowship, love, laughing, jokes, and things like that. So we're just going to be getting that time. That's going to be actually July 10th.
Barbecue.
We're going to barbecue a little bit. Just a little something. And that's going to be July 10th. It's going to be on 1111 Furman Boulevard at 11 a.m. We just want to call you all out here. You can come for 30 minutes, come for 45 minutes, come for 10 minutes, show your face, say a prayer, do some praise hands, listen to some music, grab your piece of chicken, just get some time. But also, we want to just focus on as well, our midweek that's coming up this week is all midweek is special, right?
Yes.
All midweek is special.
Yes.
Usually we have it at canal side, weather permitting, but this specific midweek is something that's even more near and dear to our hearts. It's going to be actually this Wednesday, June 29th at 7 p.m., directly across from the Tops on Jefferson, where those loved ones were lost. We're going to be fellowshipping with the Bethesda World Harvest, and it's going to be hosted by Dr. Van Gate.
Yeah.
And it's going to be something powerful.
Amen.
Just the presence of God in the area where the devil is trying to take over.
Right.
We're going to be there. We're going to be focused on God's word. We're going to be focused on raising hands, and we're going to be just smiting down the devil in all different ways, raising praise and worship in the word. And now, our thing that we want just to make sure we know is our motto for every single week is invite someone to church. And we say invite them through social media. I know you have a share button. If you're there right now and you're not directly in front of us and you're on social media, inviting someone can be inviting with your share button. Your share button takes literally 0.5 seconds to do. You never know who's in that darkest place and they can get the word of God. So we ask for you to invite a friend to church. But the next voice you're going to hear is Pastor Arthur Hall. We're so grateful to have him in our church. We're so grateful for him to be our leader and our shepherd. And we're just looking forward to his powerful word. So the next voice you're going to hear is Arthur Hall. Right now, I ask for everybody just to praise and worship and give him a clap and round of applause. Thank you, Pastor Hall. Appreciate you.
I love you, man. Oh, good morning, Journey. Good morning, everybody. Everyone who is here, we are grateful to be in God's presence. I'm excited about what's coming up. The announcements are just absolutely fantastic. And I want to take a moment to elaborate on one of the announcements. This upcoming Wednesday is a very special moment. So I looked on Facebook, social media, and one of our my mentors, my advisors from school, University at Buffalo, Dr. Van Gaten, who's a world-renowned theologian and somebody who introduced me to the Greek language when I was in school. I was an African American Studies minor, and it was this one class called the Black Church, and I took this class, and everyone told me to take it because it was an easy A, and they gave the name of the pastor who was teaching the class, and when I got to the class, it wasn't the pastor. I saw this guy, a little shorter, had this thick wavy hair. He was sitting there, and when the class started, he said, Good evening, everyone, and he wrote his name on the board. He said, my name is Dr. Van Gaten. And I said, God, this ain't the man who's supposed to be teaching a class. Something happened, it's rigged. And we introduced ourselves and talked a little bit about what the class was going to be about, went through the syllabus. It's kind of a standard class, but then he started talking about the gospel in a unique way. He started talking about how the African American community, going through a historical account, the African American community and the evolution of the Black church, and from there, it was so eye-opening. But everything he taught was in the context of the gospel. And it was so enriching. It was life-changing. And that was around the time I started teaching Bible study at the time at the church. I was attending Friendship, church most of us grew up in. And I always watched my mom, and I always watched her, and how she would teach, and she would just take such complex things and just break them down to bite-sized nuggets where anybody could understand. And she was very ethnic as well. And then he started introducing me to the Greek and the Hebrew language and the theology. And so anyway, not to go on about that, but over time, he has continued to be in my life. And when I first went to seminary, he gave me a letter of recommendation. And we have been close since. So I would love to have an opportunity for us to take this time. He's not in Buffalo a lot, but I would like for us to take this time to go and hear Bishop Van Gaten, Dr. Van Gaten, where he is. He's going to be, teaching. And he often comes and visits several churches. Bethesda is one of them, Bishop Badger and Mo Badger. We all know the family there, but we are excited to come and hear my mentor and my friend. All right. So let's continue to keep our families in prayer, and let's continue to pray for our church. I do want to reiterate, thank you to everyone, our Groceries to Seniors, and thank Ray so much for these announcements. One small excerpt I wanted to put in there is I want to give a good God bless you hand clap of praise for Inspired Buffalo, who has taken upon themselves to say for Groceries to Seniors. And so we put the link, I put the link on a social media, my social media page. It's live. We'll do the same again on our church Facebook page. But she does our t-shirts. And I had to bring this up because some people may be looking and say, normally you in a suit, you got on a suit jacket and you got the shirt and maybe a bow tie, but this kind of the second week we done seen you in a t-shirt. Now what's going on? Well, somebody said they like my shirt. This is the t-shirt, the fundraiser. And it's Only Love Can Drive Out Hate. And then we have our Journey Church Groceries to Seniors on the back. This is in response that God love supersedes hate, that we stand with God. I know this is traumatizing. I know that this is still going to have a continuous effect from here, I know, the rest of my life, because this terrorist attack was such a devastating thing that happened in our community. But we have to maintain our integrity toward God, and we have to maintain the focus that God is greater. God is greater. Come on, somebody say that with me out of your belly. God is greater. One more time. God is greater. He's greater. And that's not just in this moment and that incident. He's greater in our lives. Everywhere we are, Tasha, he's greater. Anything we're experiencing in our bodies, he's greater. Anything that could happen that's unexpected, Eddie, God is greater. God is greater. Everything he does is for a purpose and a reason. God is greater. So with that, I want to segue into our teaching for this moment, for this morning. And I'm so grateful. If you're hearing this beautiful melodic, this melody that's behind me, where it feels like angels are going to come, that's because Josh is here. That's because Josh is here, and we're grateful so much. So thank you for that. Let's get into our word for this morning. Psalms 139, verses 13 through 17. Psalms 139, 13 through 17. Last week, Friday, we witnessed a decision made by the Supreme Court that I want to talk about. The U.S. Supreme Court released a historic ruling in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women Health Organization case last Friday, overturning the abortion precedent set by the court some 50 years ago, putting the decision of abortions back to the states. And now we are living in a nation where that Roe versus Wade existed for 50 years, and there's some estimate of over 60 million babies were aborted during that duration of time. And so this has been something that has been a tug of war in not just our country, but also in the ecclesial world. There has been some that's not just Republican and Democrat that say, hey, we're pro-life, and others say we're pro-choice. It has been very heavily rooted in the church, where some churches are literally divided because some believe that, hey, we need to be pro-life, and there are some others that believe otherwise. But for the most part, this has been a very big decision, and there has been some responses all over the country with regards to this decision overturning Roe versus Wade. And the question of abortion is now on a state-by-state basis. And there are are all types of scientific arguments, even all the way down to, those who believe that life begins at conception. Uh, and you have everything and all of the arguments and all of the scientific facts, biological facts that people will bring up in order to make that argument. And I think this is a good time to talk about this because, number one, it's a decision that's made, and number two, we have a lot of opinion, as we had before, to go along with this. But y'all know me. If there's anything that I like to do, I like to keep it simple. I like to keep it as plain as possible. And there may be pro-choice, pro-life. Somebody makes a choice. It's their body. They can do what they want to do. And that's not the argument to have. That's not the argument to have to whether to determine, where life begins. The argument to have is not what one political party says as opposed to another political party. That's not the argument to have. The argument is about choice. The argument is about choice. I will say that. But what we need to understand is that it's God's choice. He's the final authority on this. So although we have doctors' opinions, we got Republican opinions, we got Democratic opinions, we got Baptist opinions, we got charismatic opinions, we got evangelical opinions, we have right-wing opinions, left-wing opinions. Everybody has an opinion about what should be. Everyone has an opinion about how we should view this. And yes, I do not want to neglect the numerous amount of circumstances that could arise for a person to have to make a decision regarding their bodies. But aside, just for now, from that, the one thing I want to focus on is what God says. Let's stay there. Let's stay with what God says. Psalms 139, I'm going to start at verse 13. And I'm going to read to verse 17. And we're going to spend a little bit of time in this. Verse 13. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven into the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me. As yet, there was none of them. How precious to me your thoughts, O God, and how vast is the sum of them. I just want to talk real brief from the subject. It's God's choice. It's God's choice. One of the things that the psalmist is experiencing after dealing with the circumstance is they come back to a realization that I am not my own, that I had nothing to do with my conception, my forming, my shaping, my ability, nothing to do with my height, nothing to do with everything that happened to me. When I was born the way I was, probably because God had something to do with that. And so the psalmist, as he's thinking about his life, as he's thinking about where he could be, as he's he's reflecting on his life, he comes to a pivotal moment where he begins to think about, and what this text really is about the omnipotence of God. He's dealing with God himself. And he comes to a pivotal moment where he takes a break and says, you know what? Wait a minute. I have to think about, first off, I have been fortunate to have been able to escape something. And not only am I fortunate about that, I'm fortunate about the fact that this great God shown so much great mercy toward me and allowed me to be where I am. Not only that, I'm thankful that this great God has everything to do with my life, even the very fact that I was born. He had everything to do with that. He knew exactly where I would be. He done predestined things for my life. And he did this even when he knitted me in the womb. So he's giving this account, and he's thankful that he is in a position where he is, but he even goes beyond that to give God homage and recognition and honor for the fact that he is even here. And he even goes further into the depths of how strategic and how crafty and how detailed God is in shaping his own life. And so he deals with God's power. He said, "This is God's power. This is the working of him. Had nothing to do with being here. This is the working of him." And if there's anything that is going to set us on a course that is completely zeroed in on what God wants for our lives, it's understanding and knowing that God has everything to do with us. That he has everything to do with us. We have to get this perspective that God has everything to do with us being here, with where we are. He has everything to do with us. And when we acknowledge that, that puts in context and perspective how we view God. How we view God and how God views us is pivotal. We are the creature, he's the creator. He had the power to create everything, even man, and then gave everything two things. God does two things in creation. Don't want to get too far into this, but we will. God does two things in creation. He gives it a principle and establishes a system. He gives it a principle. There were trees that grow bearing fruit of their own kind, and the fruit has the seed to bear another tree that produced the same fruit, to bear another tree that produced the same fruit. And the law will continue to go because God made it that way. God made it that way for humans to reproduce and for us to continue to bear fruit and for us to continue to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And that principle will continue to happen. There are things that God set in motion, and there are principles that God have in motion that are intended to continue as long as God says so. Have you ever wondered that the earth is covered in 75% water, but it never floods? That's because God has established what he wills according to his will. And so the writer of the Psalms is giving an account of God's omnipotence. Now, God's omnipotence signifies simply that God is all powerful. He has all power, right? God is all powerful. However, because God is all powerful does not mean that he does any and everything at random. God uses and God exerts his power according to his own will. He doesn't just do things haphazardly at random and change his mind and, okay, I did it this way. Let me figure, let me do something new and then I'll do it this way. God is a very extremely detailed and strategic God. This is not the type of God that just switches up every time he feels like it. And so the proper definition when we look at God's power is that God is all powerful and able to do whatever he wills. And since it is according to his will, it's according to his nature. And so God does everything that's in harmony with his perfect will. He does everything in harmony with his perfect will. It is God's will for humanity to produce. It is God's will for us to be in alignment with him. How do I know? Because if you look throughout the scriptures, everywhere God is, he's trying to dwell with man. Everything God does, he's trying to dwell with man because he loves you so much. He's trying to dwell. He created pillars of fire and clouds. He said, make to me a tabernacle. I want to feel it. I want to hang out with you. I want to be with you. I want to be there. Everything he does according to his will. It's God's will for us to have a relationship with him. So much so that he sent his own son to die for us so that he could fulfill the requirement of meeting us and having fellowship with us. He does it according to his own will. And he uses his power according to his own will. That's why it's important for you to understand that as a child of God, as an adopted son and daughter of God, as believers in Jesus Christ, that we are in his kingdom, that there is no weapon that is formed against you that will prosper. That is a principle that God established for those who love him and those that are called according to his purpose. That's why we can walk with boldness. That's why we can stand firm, because we believe that the great God, who has his own power, and anything that comes that is contrary to his will not happen, it will not stand, and we can stand on that and believe and know that this great God has the power to be able to protect us as sons and daughters, because it is according to his will that we are in fellowship with him through Jesus Christ. That's what it is. So the psalmist has something here, that God does not do things that are not in harmony with his nature and his will. 2 Timothy 2:13, he says, if we are faithful, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. Even when we are faithless, he is still faithful in being who he is, because he is a God that cannot change. He cannot change. He don't change his mind. He don't go with the flow of the society. He don't go with the flow of culture. He don't go with the flow of Republican, Democrat. He says, I'm God. I ain't lining up with you. You get in line with me. Period. And so when it behooves us that at this time in this moment, we have to take into account that God does everything according to his perfect will, and his power flows according to his perfect will. God cannot lie. Hebrews 6:18, so that the two unchangeable things, in which is it impossible for God to lie, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. It is impossible for God to lie. It's impossible. And so we have to take these things into account when we're thinking about, what does God say about this? So in this third strophe, this is Psalms. It's songs. So in this third strophe, this verses 13 through 18, it focuses on an aspect. The psalmist focuses on an aspect of the omnipotence of the Lord and its application to the psalmist's experience. In other words, the psalmist is recognizing God's total power in his life, but then he zeroes in on a specific part of it, which is the very crafting of his birthing, the very crafting even before his birth. And he talks about this, and he says the psalmist used two images to speak of his birth at creation. And he talks about this. So verse 13, he says, for you formed me in my inward parts. You formed me in my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. You knitted. And so he uses this term. He talks about the role, not only of the human experience, but he uses this term to describe how God does this. And so this term that he used, he says, you knitted, it literally means that the Lord's work in his life extended beyond the beginning to exclude the whole development. But in the beginning, this term knit, it's used to have an image of an embroider or a picture of a poetic language. So he's literally talking about God's special ability for creating. It applies the artwork of a needlework and a specification for which what was formed is ascribed to also of the word. So in other words, what he's saying, let me make this plain. So what he's saying is, you knitted me in my mother's womb. That same word knit is used when God gave Moses the instructions and the details to craft and build the sanctuary, which is the tabernacle. And he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and I want you to knit it all together. I want you to have the beast with wings. I want you to knit all of this together, sew it together. It got to be strategic. Every single thread has to be aligned. Everything has to be together and has to be blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. I want you to knit this because I have a special purpose and a use for it. Not just to craft something where you can just have a tent to be in. No, this is my tent. I'm going to be inside of this. And so what I need you to knit together, I need it to be a specific specification. And I'm going to give you the instructions the best way I know how, Moses. And I'm going to tell you it's going to be very clear. And I need this to be because this is going to be a special purpose, a special use. So the psalmist is reflecting and uses the term knit. He says, he specifically knitted me. Matter of fact, God, the way that you gave Moses instructions to knit that tabernacle and that tent, it was only a tent, but it was God's tent. The same thing you did there was the same thing you did for me. I said, you took your holy needle and you said, I'm going to put this point here. I'm going to connect that bone to this bone, that bone to that bone. I'm going to specifically make you and craft you because I got some use for you down the road in the future. You're going to be mine. I'm going to dwell in you one day. That's why I made you the way I made you. You're specific with me. You ain't just wave your hand and throw some whim and put me together. It was a detailed task. That in all the power that you had, you sat down and you said, wait a minute, give me my gloves. Let me put some things together. Okay, now I got this canvas. Hold on a minute. I need to knit this one together. So it is intricate artistry. It's not just sewing, it's sewing for a pattern and a destiny. It's sewing a story. It's putting a series of things together because I know what this one intended and is supposed to be. It is not just knitting in the womb and then all of a sudden, okay, this is what I want. But I'm so detailed in the womb because what I'm preparing here has a destiny. So I'm not just dealing with this one here. I'm dealing with this one so that this one can grow and flourish and so that I can have a purpose for this one down here. Let me explain something to you. God didn't make you with just a whim. God made you with a purpose. He was strategic with you. He was detailed with you. And everything that he had done with you, he did with a purpose with his own holy needle so that you can be exactly what it is that he wanted you to be. And in the time that came for him to be yours and you to be his, he came and dwelled inside of you because that was his purpose all along. You were made for him and he was made for you. And this is what God desires for us to understand about him. God said, wait a minute. I thought I was the one that gave life. I thought that was my choice. Now we're dealing with some difficult things here. But I just want to stay focused right now, right here. I want to stay focused on God. I don't want us to, it's not something we will run from. This is something we will receive the counsel of God on. That's how we deal with these things. You can probably tell I've been in a few conversations this past couple of weeks. And this is how we deal with this. He says, I knit you in your mother's womb, and in your mother's womb, I praise you that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. He says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. All the days of his life were planned and recorded in advance by the Lord, even before he emerged from the womb. Jeremiah 1:15 is a reference to this. 1:5, Jeremiah 1:5 is a reference to this. He was fearfully and wonderfully made. That doesn't mean that that term fearful, look at this. The fearfully and wonderfully made, it doesn't mean that, I'm afraid to make this one. No, God is not afraid. That's not something that The fearfully and wonderfully made is the reverence that God possesses, that we are to fear him, that we are to reverence him, that we are to make him exclusive, is that God took so much time and so much detail crafting you that when he was finished, people know that you were his work. That's what that is. The psalmist says, how can I say this without bragging about myself? He knit me in my mother's womb, and I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm trying not to be arrogant about this, but I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. God done made me so unique. He made me so well. I got my own fingerprint. I got my own eyes. I got my own toes. I got my own fingers. That everything is so unique about me that God put his own fingerprint on me. He put his own design on me. Everything that is designed about me in the blueprint, on the blueprint paper, everything that is made, he did it himself. He made me so unique. I'm different from anything else or anybody else that ever existed on this earth. And God put so much time toward me that I'm the only one that when I came out, everyone recognized and God recognized that this one belongs to him because he done made me so fearfully and wonderfully. I'm unique. And sometimes you got to get to yourself and be just like the psalmist and sing to yourself even if you have to, and give yourself enough to look in the mirror and say, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. God only made one of me, and guess what? I'm it. God has given me everything that I have. Thank you for my hands. Thank you for my arms. Thank you for the legs that I have. My feet are mine. Everything about me, God made unique. Everything that God has given me is mine, and I'm using it for God's glory because that's the way he made me. And if God has anything to do with crafting me, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and I'm made for his, and I'm going to do what God has given me to do. That's what the psalmist was saying. The psalmist was just basking on God's power and detail and craftiness by just looking at himself. Yeah. So he is acknowledging God's power. Yeah. That's the undercurrent. That's the theological perspective that the psalmist is giving. Is that everything about me, everything when you look at me, I am a work of God. Yeah. Everything that you see about me, God did it. Everything that I am is because of God. Everything I have become is because of God. Matter of fact, since God did all of that, I need to go back and look at the time I was born. Because he did that. Matter of fact, I don't even need to stop there. I need to go a little further. When I was in my mother's womb, God predestined every single occurrence to happen for my parents to hook up, no matter where they hooked up. I don't want to think about that. Wherever they hooked up, that God has something to do with that, and then something to do with me. Because that's the way he designed it. And so the psalmist is looking at himself and just acknowledging the work of God. Now, I don't know what the psalmist looked like. I don't even know if he was looking in the mirror. You don't have to look in the mirror. He just got to a point in his life where he began to acknowledge the power and the presence of God. The psalmist's intricate anatomy points to the amazing creation, and seeing God's wonderful craftsman in his body promotes the psalmist into an absolute, unadulterated, unhindered praise. And the psalmist got to the point so much so that he started to sing a song. And in his song, he said, for you form my inner parts. I could think of a tune to go with this if I had a guitar, but I don't know how to play a guitar. And then he started singing a song. Then in verse 15, he says, my frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret. When I was being made in secret. Y'all know what that means. When I was being made in secret. Huh? He said, when I was being made in secret, intricately you woven into the depths of the earth. Intricately you woven into the depths of the earth. So the psalmist uses a term here where he talks about it's yasar, it's a Hebrew word, and it refers to the work of God as a craftsman. And it gives the illustration of a potter. Potter. You'll find reference illustrations of this in Jeremiah chapter 18, where he works a potter. When a potter works with the clay, the potter lumps the clay on the wheel, and he begins to shape. He begins to mold. Now, here's the key to that, is that a craftsman, a professional potter, knows exactly what he wants to do with the clay before the clay even gets to the wheel. Now, there are some artists today, I'm not talking about today, I'm talking about Hebrew time. There's some artists today that they put clay on the wheel and they kind of don't know what they're going to do. They just start shaping and molding. I think that's fantastic. But during this time, and the craft that he's talking about is when a potter would take the clay, he would put it on the wheel, and he knows exactly what he wants it to be, even though it don't look like it, it don't smell like it, don't even feel like it. He knows exactly what it wants to be. As far as some, they would look at it and say, that's just a lump of dirt. But to the potter, it is absolute craftsmanship because his hands is on it. So he takes it, he knows exactly the amount that he wants to put on the wheel.